Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a story that is, well, it's as fascinating as it is absolutely chilling. We're pulling apart the historical record of an event that literally feels like it belongs in a Hollywood thriller, but it's entirely real. We're talking about a massive survival story from the frozen extremes of our planet, and we're going to explore exactly what happens when humanity is just suddenly cut off from the rest of the world. Okay, let's dive into this. Get ready, because we are unpacking the haunting mystery of the 1998 Arctic survival story. In 1998, a ship entered the frozen north and never returned. Just let those words sink in for a second. Without any warning whatsoever, a massive, modern vessel was simply swallowed by the ice. No distress signals reaching the outside world, no immediate rescue, just an abrupt, terrifying erasure right off the map. It is the ultimate nightmare of isolation. And to truly understand how this happened, we've got to go all the way back to the very beginning. Section 1, setting sail in 1998, the doomed voyage. I want you to imagine, if you can, actually stepping aboard this doomed vessel back in 98. You're packing your bags, you're feeling that rush of excitement of a grand voyage, right? You walk up the ramp, feeling the gentle sway of the ocean beneath this massive steel hull. You're expecting the absolute trip of a lifetime. The air is crisp, the mood is super bright, and no one, absolutely no one, has any idea what's waiting for them in the dark. Because see, this wasn't some small, rugged expedition crew of extreme explorers. No, there were over 300 passengers on board. We're talking about tourists with their cameras, workers maintaining the ship, everyday families with kids. They all embarked on what they totally believed would be a peaceful, incredibly beautiful journey through the icy Arctic route. And honestly, for the first part of the trip, it was exactly that. Endless oceans covered in snow, massive, majestic glaciers just surrounding the ship. The passengers spent their days enjoying these breathtaking frozen views, completely unaware of the absolute nightmare lurking just over the horizon. Section 2, trapped in the ice, a hostile shift. Now, what's really interesting here is how quickly the trap sprang. The Arctic's beauty is definitely a double-edged sword, and that tranquil environment, it shifted into a suffocating prison practically overnight. Look at this rapid timeline. Hour 1, a violent snowstorm suddenly appears out of nowhere. The winds are literally smashing against the ship. By hour 2, visibility just disappears completely. The captain is blinded, and even though he tries to turn back, it's already too late. By hour 3, huge, crushing walls of ice close in from every single side, physically locking the vessel in place. And then, by hour 4, the freezing temperatures seep deep into the mechanics of the ship, causing the engine to violently struggle. It was a rapid, inescapable trap. And then, power failed. Silence. The heavy vibrations of the massive engine just died. The ship completely stopped moving. Imagine being a passenger right in that exact moment. The hum of the lights, the mechanical heartbeat of the ship that you've grown so used to over the past few days, all of it, just gone. Replaced by a sudden, agonizing, and absolute silence that blanketed the frozen ocean. You are now stranded, thousands of miles away from civilization, completely swallowed by the dark. Section 3, the fight for warmth, a primal battle. So imagine yourself sitting in that quiet, pitch-black cabin. The novelty of the storm has completely worn off, and a deeply primal realization starts to set in. You realize you are totally isolated, and the deadliest element on Earth is seeping right through the walls, minus 40 degrees. That is the number that became the true enemy of every single person on board. I mean, we're talking about a level of cold that physically hurts to breathe, a cold that cracks solid metal and freezes water instantly. The freezing temperature was no longer just the weather outside. It was a lethal, active force trying to extinguish the 300 lives trapped inside that metal hull. So the fight for warmth wasn't just about comfort anymore. It was literally a minute-by-minute battle for survival. And this brilliantly illustrates what the daily routine became. Existence inside the ship was stripped down to a brutal, desperate cycle just to stay alive. Step 1, families were forced to huddle together, strictly sharing a few thin blankets to pull whatever body heat they had left. Step 2, the luxurious wooden furniture, the lounge chairs, the dining tables, was systematically smashed apart and burned to stave off the freezing air. And step 3, because the pipes had frozen solid, getting even a single sip of drinking water meant the exhausting, never-ending chore of melting snow over those makeshift, smoky indoor fires. Survival became this deeply exhausting, claustrophobic chore every single day. Section 4, starving in the dark. Food supplies fade. Let's move on and see how this builds because the psychological toll was massive. As days turned into weeks with absolutely zero communication and no passing ships, that initial mindset, the optimistic belief that rescue teams and helicopters would arrive quickly, evaporated. I mean, it's a modern ship, right? Someone must be looking for them. But the grim reality set in as the food supplies completely vanished. Hunger took over, and order collapsed entirely. The source material notes that passengers actually began violently fighting over the few remaining scraps of food and survival resources. Hope didn't just fade, it was literally starved out of them. And outside the ship, the frozen world became absolutely terrifying. Strange, groaning sounds echoed across the ice in the dead of night. Pure paranoia gripped the starving, freezing passengers. Some survivors later claimed they saw dark figures moving through the snowstorm. Were they real? Or was the devastating cold and malnutrition just making them hallucinate in the dark? Well, that paranoia turned into absolute terror one night. A crew member actually vanished during a massive blizzard. He just disappeared entirely into the whiteout. When the storm finally cleared, all they found were his footprints leading off into the deep snow, and then they just stopped abruptly. It completely cemented the utter hopelessness of their situation. Inside the ship was a freezing, starving battleground, but outside the ship, that was certain death. Section 5. The ghost ship remains, discovered at last. Months dragged on. The world had largely moved on, assuming the ship had just sunk to the bottom of the sea. But finally, a small rescue aircraft flying a remote route detected a strange anomaly hidden between the giant ice mountains. The frozen ship had actually been found. Emergency teams immediately rushed to the location, cutting through the dense ice to reach the vessel. But sadly, they were far too late for most. Out of the 300 passengers who had so happily boarded months ago, only a very small number of survivors remained alive. They were incredibly weak, they were severely frozen, but miraculously, they were alive. So the crucial point is what those rescuers found inside the frozen tomb when they finally stepped aboard. It wasn't just the survivors. They found a haunted time capsule. They walked into frozen rooms left completely untouched since that fateful night in '98. They found preserved plates of food still sitting on the dining tables from the exact moment the power first failed. Emergency lights were still dimly flickering in empty, freezing hallways. And all around it, the endless, relentless Arctic snow just continued its work, slowly swallowing the ship whole. The teams evacuated the living, but they had to leave the massive steel tomb behind. Which leaves us with this incredible, chilling final question to wrap up this explainer. Because the vessel was abandoned to the elements, some say the frozen ship still exists today, hidden somewhere beneath the ice, a completely preserved ghost ship, just sitting silently in the dark, miles deep into the Arctic. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What else is out there, perfectly frozen in time, just waiting to be found? Thanks so much for exploring this incredible story with me today, and keep your curiosity alive.